Hi guys, Samantha from Jessica Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create Snowflake Obsidian. So after many tests, I've decided that the best way to do this is to actually create a stamp with all of these tiny little dots in it, as you can see here, and then we're going to do a mukumegane with it. So I just want to show you quickly how to make that stamp. You're going to roll out a piece of polymer clay on the thickest setting of your pasta machine, about 2mm thick. And then you're going to want to find the smallest ballpoint tool you can find. If you don't have a ballpoint tool, I sell this in a set of 5 on my Etsy shop Jessica Design. But basically you just want to go and find the smallest ballpoint tool you can get. And then if you can get a photo, or even better a real piece of Snowflake Obsidian, and copy it while you're busy doing this, that is always best. And now after doing tests, I find that you want to make the dots, which are the white bits, smaller than what you're actually going to want them in your finished piece, because as we're doing the mukumegane and when we put it into the mold that we're going to be using later, the dots tend to expand a bit, so it's always better to just make them a little bit smaller than what you need, because in general you can make things bigger if you want them to be bigger, but it's a lot harder to make them smaller again. So this takes some time, so put on a movie, get a cup of tea, something along those lines, to keep you entertained while you're doing this, because it takes a long time. You can see that I've been busy. So far this has taken me around an hour to do, so I just wanted to show you how to do it. But if you don't feel like going and taking this amount of time, you can always go and buy this texture stamp from my Etsy shop Jessica Design. But if you can make it yourself, that's always best, in my opinion. Especially since your design will then be unique to you. So what you essentially want to do is you want to form large clusters, as you can see here, and then in amongst those clusters, try to do it as randomly as possible. You want to put little bits and pieces, and then you also want to leave large areas of clay, because that's going to be where our black is. But you do want to have some fairly large clusters. So there's another cluster done, and then I want to pop some little small ones in. Now when you're doing this, make sure you go nice and deep, because we want to be using a lot of layers in this mukumegane, and so you want a nice deep stamp to use. Okay, and we are almost done. Just a little bit more to go. And you will want to be taking breaks while you're doing this as well, because your hand can get stiff and you don't want to leave your hand cramped like this for more than 15 minutes or so, because that can end up hurting quite a bit. So take regular breaks. Okay, and so I'm pretty happy with that. I might go back and just tend to it a little bit, check that everything is as deep as you want it to be. Make sure that you don't want to expand a few things. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now you can see already that I'm using a square cutter. You can just trim it out by hand, but I've marked out where I want my stamp so that it's a 7 by 7 centimeter stamp. And now what I'm going to do is, when I was looking at this, I noticed that they generally tend to go in a direction. So these ones are going up, and these ones are kind of going to the side over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gently going to stretch this, like so. Not so much that it's going to make them big, but it's just going to make it look generally that they're going in one direction. Okay, and then I might need to just bring it out a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and you can use your leftover clay for this. This is a great way to use leftover clay. Okay, and there we are. There is our stamp. And now I'm going to pop this in the oven for a full hour at pretty much recommended temperature, and then when we are done we can begin creating our faux snowflake obsidian. Okay, and here it is out of the oven. So now what we're going to do is we are going to put that to the side, and we're going to prepare our mukumegane. So what you're going to need are 2 colours. And these are colour recipes that I had in the beginning of the video. So this one is 4 slate grey and 5 white, all primo. This one is 3 slate grey and 2 white, primo again. So what we're going to do is just going to grab these. I'm just going to quickly mold them into a triangle. Very easy. Because we're going to be making a skinner blend. Okay. Easy. And then I'll just put them together like so, so we've got one end kind of sticking out and the other one also sticking out. And I'll just twist that over so that we've got some more clay on that end. Okay, then I'm going to make a skinner blend with that, like you would a normal skinner blend. Okay, and here is our blend. Now I've only rolled this out about 8 times on the pasta machine, so hopefully you can see that we have not got a complete blend. We've got quite a sharp contrast between the light and the dark here, and we've got a few little blurred bits and pieces throughout, and that's what we want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold that as much as we can so that we can create a condensed piece. Okay, and we want to flatten that. And now this is quite a lenient skinner blend. We want it actually to kind of have squiggles and things in it. We don't want it to be a really nice even skinner blend. So don't worry about rip pulls and things in that in here. Basically all we want to do is we want to get it so that we can roll out a sheet with the white graduating to the dark grey. So I'm just squishing that in any manner I can. Okay, and we're almost there. Right. Then once we get to a certain point, I'm going to pop it through my pasta machine on the thickest setting. So I'm just going to have it in a rectangle so that the widest part of the rectangle can go through a pasta machine, and then we'll end up with something that looks somewhat like a square. Okay. There we are. Pop that to the side. Bring over my blade and just check, because you're going to have some air bubbles in here. You want to get rid of those immediately by just smoothing them out after you've sliced through. Okay, now put that to the side, and I'm going to bring over a piece of black Primo that has been rolled out on the thinnest setting of my pasta machine. You can see it's a little ripply, that's fine. We want to put that on the dark side of the skinner blend, not the light side. Now I'm just going to take it from one end and I'm going to smooth it down. Okay. And then I'm just roughly going to trim that out. And then we're going to roll that to the thick setting on my pasta machine. We've lengthened it into kind of a rectangular shape now. Now just make sure that you don't have any air bubbles in this, because we really don't want that. And then just smooth out those scratches from the blade. And I'm going to cut this in two because I can afford to use half of this on my texture stamp so that we end up with more. And now before we do anything, we want to dust the stamp and the clay in cornstarch. So I'll just bring over a bag of cornstarch, and I've got a brush as well. We're going to thoroughly soak this in cornstarch, and the reason for this is because these holes are really tiny and so the clay can get quite easily stuck in them. I wouldn't advise using water just because water is not as effective as cornstarch, I've found. The only problem with cornstarch is it does prevent things sticking later on, but I've got a way to fix it. Okay, so that's our stamp. Then just rub your clay in that cornstarch, and then use your brush to just gently wipe over the surface, like so. Okay, then wipe away the excess cornstarch and use a wet wipe to make sure that there is none left on your tile. That is quite important. Then we'll bring over a stamp, and I'm going to stand up to do this, and you always want to have it black side down, and we're going to press that into our stamp. And I forgot to tell you how thin the black was. I said it was the thinnest setting. It is 0.5 millimeters thick, and my thickest setting is 2 millimeters thick. So I rolled out our grey Skin to Blend plug 2 millimeters thick, and then I took a piece of black that was 0.5 millimeters thick and put that on top of the 2 millimeters thick Skin to Blend, then rolled it through the pasta machine on my thickest setting again to create a 2 millimeter thick piece of clay. So there are the measurements for you. Okay, and now I'm thoroughly pressing down this, making sure that I get into those gaps in the clay, because we really do want that stuck down in there. And now, because we do have cornstarch on the back here, before I lift it out of the clay, I'm going to bring over some translucent liquid clay. Any liquid clay will work. Just make sure that it is a stickish liquid clay. So you can use Kato, Fimo, or Sculpey. Just make sure you put on a tiny amount on the back. And all this is going to do is it's going to counteract that cornstarch, and it's going to make it nice and sticky, so that it sticks to our tile while we are doing our muku megane slicing, and then it will stick to our background veneer that I will bring over later. So just smooth it over the surface, and I do this while it is in the stamp so that I don't flatten out the image when I do this, because if you lifted it out you'd have to smooth it over the back and you would flatten out the image. Okay, now we're going to very gently lift this out, and because we doused it in so much cornstarch, it should come out fairly easily. If you find an area that's giving trouble, leave it and come back to it from a different angle, like so, and you should be able to get the whole thing out. Put that to the side, stick that down in a nice area for you to see, and then gently press it down onto a tile, and because it's covered in liquid clay on the back, it will stick nicely. Then I'll bring over my brush again, because there's a bit of cornstarch on here, and just brush over the surface. Okay, now we are ready to shave, and now you're going to want a nice sharp thin tissue blade. I find it's easiest to use a nice thin flexible tissue blade, and before you do anything you want to trim away these little bits and pieces around the edge, because they get in your way, and over there. And I'll just pop that to the side. Okay, and now we want to go very slowly when doing this. And my head would ordinarily be over here so that I could see, but I'm going to go at it from here because I can see that well enough. We're gently going to slice. And it's okay if you go a little too deep, you'll just get a larger spot. That is perfectly fine. And that's very subtle, but there is a light skin blend there. I'm not sure if you're able to pick that up on the camera. But you just want to continue shaving like this. Go very slowly. and shave off all those raised areas, and if you're not getting a good enough impression, you can always just go in a little bit deeper and you'll end up with a unique looking blob, I guess. And just carry on doing that the whole way through. Okay, and here it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flatten this out because it is quite bumpy. Don't use a pasta machine. Use a piece of plain printing paper and just burnish over the top using your fingers. And this will flatten it out, but it will not distort the pattern, which is quite important. We don't want that pattern getting any larger than it has to, because we're already going to need to put it into some cabochon molds, and well, that already stretches it out a little bit. Just a little bit, it's not a problem, but putting it through a pasta machine would really cause some issues. So just make sure you put that nice and smooth as possible. Okay. Got a little bit more over here. Alright. Okay, got some coleslaw on me still. Alright, now also remember that we're going to be doing sanding, so if you see any tiny little bits and pieces that you don't like, don't worry about it, the sanding will take care of it. Right, now I'm just going to lift this up off of my tile, and it's still got that sticky back, which is good. And now you want to go and choose your cabochon mold. It's the best bit. Okay, so I've chosen my molds. You can use any mold you want, but these are the ones I'm going to be using today. Okay, so I'm going to start with this really nice rectangle shape, and we're going to take some of that old clay that we used, that we cut off as scraps, and I'm just going to use that to mould roughly the shape of this cabochon. Okay, and I'm just getting up in the corners. Oops. Just to make sure I get the whole thing. Okay, and then I'm going to just squish down on the mould so that it kind of is smaller than the actual mould, because we're going to need the clay to just come slightly over the edges. Okay, so it does not have to be the same shape at all. I'm just going to bring this over, and I'm going to slip it over the edge. Do I like that? No, let's try a different angle. I think I like this side better. Yes, yes, I like that better. Okay, grab a blade. Trim away excess. Okay, and I don't want it to expand much when I'm doing this. Then we'll just take the excess and press it onto the back, and that should give us enough clay to work with. Now I just want to press down nice and hard on here. Okay, and then I'll just use my blade to very gently trim away any excess. Then I'll just make sure that I've pressed it properly. I can see what it looks like on the back. Bring over a wet wipe so that I can clean the back a bit more, so that I can see better what's going on. That's what's nice about having translucent mold, you can see whether you like it or not. Okay, now I'm just going to make sure that I've pressed it hard enough. And then you're going to put that in the freezer for a little while, because it needs to freeze so that you can get it out of the mold nice and cleanly without any worry about the shape distorting. And in the meantime, I will go and make some more. Okay, so I finished up putting these in the freezer. There are more in the freezer at the moment, cooling off, but I wanted to show you demolding these quickly. Here's the one. Put that to the side. And you really want to leave them in for quite a while. The longer you leave them in, the easier they are to demold. And you can see how nice and shiny they are as well. Not sure if you can see on that one. Maybe this one. Here we are, you can see. So there's not too much sanding to be done with these because the molds are very nice, whoops, and smooth. Not sure if you can see there. Anyway, so when I am done popping all of them out of their molds, I'm going to bake them for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And then we will sand them, and then we will turn them into some sort of a project. Okay, so while that's in the oven, we are going to create a monarch butterfly wing cane. So you're going to need a Skinner blend plug with a red, orange and yellow Kato. You can use red, orange and yellow from any brand you want, but I'm going to be using Kato because their colours are really nice and bright. And I'll provide links to how to create a Skinner blend and a Skinner blend plug in the links below. Then you're also going to need a bullseye cane with black around the outside and white in the centre, and I'll provide a link to how to create that. And then you're also going to need a sheet of black polymer clay rolled out to about 0.8mm thick. Okay. So we'll start out with this. Just pop that on there. Trim on both sides. And I was thinking of going with a monarch butterfly wing because we're going to be incorporating that into our bezel that we are going to create later. And I thought that a monarch butterfly wing was quite appropriate because of the fact that, well, the monarch butterfly tends to have these really cute little white dots around its edges, and it's also really nice and bright, which makes for a really nice effect. So I thought we would go with that. Okay, then just smooth out air bubbles like so. And there's one right there. Now I'm just going to trim up these edges. Then push on these edges. Just because I want to reduce it down some more. And we want to reduce it until we can cut out about 5 to 6 pieces. So I'm probably going to use my roller to do this. So I'm going to reduce this down, and then we'll cut out 5 to 6 pieces from it. And I've got that basically reduced down. I'm just going to trim off these edges like so, and then I want you to take it and pinch. Now this is not the most realistic looking monarch butterfly because ordinarily I would make it a dark orange all the way to a light orange, but because we are dealing with Snowflake Obsidian, which is, I have to admit, a dull-ish stone, I wanted to bring a little bit more interest to the piece, so I'm going to be using, I used red and yellow in the Skinner blend for the monarch butterfly cane. And if you don't want that, you can always just work with light and dark oranges. I have already done a tutorial on how to do a correct monarch butterfly cane in my Tango cane tutorial. If you're watching this on Patreon, you should be able to see that in the archives, so go and check that out if you want to make a real monarch butterfly cane. And if you're watching this on Etsy, it is on Etsy for purchase. Okay, so now again, just trimming the ends. And then I need to cut that into 5 pieces. Okay, that's 1, 2, and each one's going to be a little bit shorter than the next. And I'll show you why in a minute. So that's the original length, and then each of these is going to get a little bit thinner because I'm just going to quickly reduce it so that it is the same length. Okay, then we're going to start with 1, and I just want to lengthen this out quite a bit. So I'm just going to pinch this end, like so. Okay, there we go. Then I'm going to grab the next one, and I'm also going to pinch that. And I'm going to lay it on top, like so. I'll carry on with the others until I reach something like this. Then I'm just going to squish some more so that I can form it into a triangle. And the sharper this triangle, the better. I'm just going to cut to see what it looks like. Here you can see what it looks like. So I just want to point these out a bit more. Okay, and I'm just going to round these ends over here, like so. So it forms something like that. Then we're going to bring over our bullseye cane. Just going to trim at that end, and we're going to cut out for ourselves some pieces. Like so. Just cut them out to be the same length as your butterfly. Like so. Then I'm just going to grab these and I'm going to pop one. And I'm going to start from here and work my way down. And then I'm going to take these and I'm going to roll them out to twice their size. And I'm just going to pop them into these little crevices. Like that. Okay. And then I'm just going to trim away any excess. And then I want you to just gently press this all in and form it into kind of a teardrop. you do want these pressed all in. And this is basically the size of the cane that I want. I don't want it to be any smaller. So I'm just pressing along these sides, but I'm not reducing. Okay, and then I'm going to just round out these edges. But keep this point nice and sharp. A little slice. And here is how it looks. Okay, and that is our cane for the moment. We will use that later on. So now our cabochons have cooled and we are ready to sand them. Now here are the ones with our grey, which is the more accurate version. If we bring over this, you can see there is somewhat the correct grey. Now remember, this is nice and shiny, so we're going to need to wait for this. We're going to need to sand it down. But if you don't think those are bright enough, here is what one with white looks like, and you can go for that too if you want. Okay, and now because our cabochons were put into a mould that was quite smooth, we don't need to do a lot of sanding. So I think, which one do I want to use? I quite like this one, but then I also like this one. You know, I'm probably going to sand all of them. If you see any with the little bloops on the end, you can always clean that up. But no, I'm going to sand all of these, so I think I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to grab my 400 and I'm just going to start sanding. You don't need to be too aggressive with the sandpaper. Just gently start sanding. And then I'm going to go from a 400 to an 8000. You should go up to as high as you possibly can. And we'll see how they look buffed. And if they don't look great when they're buffed, due to the fact that you have not sanded them as well as you should, or just because maybe you decide it just doesn't look as shiny as you would like it, we can always apply UV resin, or we can apply liquid clay. But for now, I'm going to go with the classic sanding route. So this will take me a little while. Okay, so here they are sanded. Now I've done one with liquid clay because these do have minor scratches in them due to the Mukumegana, and I just think that the liquid clay looks better because it's quite nice and shiny. So what we're going to do is we're just quickly going to buff this, and then I'll show you how to do it with the liquid clay. And that is how it will look once buffed, but we're going to do it in liquid clay now. So just grab some translucent liquid clay. I'm using translucent Kato liquid clay. I'm just going to squirt a bit on there. And then I'm going to use my liquid clay brush to just gently brush it around. And I'll do it with all the others as well. Okay, almost done. And again, the liquid clay is optional. You can just buff it if you want, but I just think it looks nicer, so why not go over that? And the thing is, you could use UV resin, but then you're going to need to wait until you've finished baking your bezel because the UV resin isn't bakeable, whereas the liquid clay is. So that's why I prefer to use liquid clay to UV resin. Now I'll bring over my heat gun and I'll have it on my hottest setting. And there we are. That is how it looks. And you can see how beautiful and shiny that is. Now I'm just going to pick it up with my blade so that I can show you how shiny it is. I don't want to be touching it at the moment because it's quite hot. And I'm going to repeat that with these as well. Alright, so here are all of our cabochons. Now they might look like they have a little bit of an oil slick on them. All you need to do is you just need to go and brush them off and that oil slick look will go. And let me just zoom you out quickly. There we are. So there are all of our cabochons. Now feel free to do whatever you want with these, but we are going to move on to creating our bezel. So I'm just going to quickly brush this one off, like so. And I've got a piece of black polymer clay here. I'm just going to take that and I'm going to texture the back. So I'm just going to stand up to do that. There we are. That'll work. And now we're going to work with it. Now the back texture might get squished a little bit, but you can fix that later. So I've just pressed that in to give me a rough starting point. And now we're going to bring over our cane. Move this to the side. And I'm going to slice slices from this. And I'm going to try and keep them all the same size. And I've done a YouTube video on this technique. It's much simpler, so if you're having trouble with the one that I'm showing you here, you can always go check that out. I will provide a link to that video in the description below the video. Now I'm just going to take this, I'm going to pop it down, don't stick it down too hard. Now you can either pop it like that or we can overlap it. And I'm going to put them together like so. I'm not going to overlap. In the YouTube video I show you how to overlap them, but I don't think the overlapping is necessary. So I'm just going to place it down. So let's see. It'll look somewhat like that. And I'll just continue placing them. And there we are. Now what we're going to do is we're just gently going to press down on this. Like so. Then bring over a plain piece of printing paper and burnish. should smooth out any seams we have. And now before we apply our cabochon, I am going to just trim away this excess so it's not in the way for me. And we're going to retexture the back. So just make sure that your tile's clean. Got some stuff building up there. Okay, and you can see that it's really not very well textured anymore due to that. So just grab your sponge and give it a good texture again. Okay. Pick it up. And now we have two options here. We can either use a square in the middle, or you can use the round like before. And I think I want to use the round. I think it looks quite nice. I just want to stretch this just a touch more so that we get a little bit more of the yellow. Yeah, that's better. I want a little bit more of the orange. Okay. And now I think I want to smooth out these seams along the edge here, so I'll have to texture it again, but that's fine. So I'm just going to grab my burnishing paper and I'm going to smooth out every single one of the seams here and the seams around here. Okay, and here it is. Back's nice and textured. I'm just going to position that like so. Now the back's going to get untextured again. So I'm going to press nice and hard on this to get a dome on each side. So you've got to press really hard. And don't worry about fingerprints that will appear on this, you can easily smooth those out later. But the whole point of this is that you get a really good dome. Okay. There we go. Then I'm going to grab a circle cutter and I'm going to decide which one I like the best. Start with the largest, and I think I might want something larger than my largest circle cutter actually. Okay, so I'm going with my smallest maxi cutter. I'm going to press down on that, and that will give it a minor dome as well. Give it a spin. And then the back needs to be textured again, as you can see. So I'll just smooth these edges. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to pop that in the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And I'm just going to quickly texture that back properly. Then I'm just going to smooth that down. So it's nice and smooth. I'll just check it again with my cutter. Make sure it's the right shape. And then I'm going to pop that in for a full hour, and then after that's done we can just quickly pop on a bail and finish off the edges, and then we can string it. Okay. And here it is out of the oven. Now we're going to wrap a snake around this because it needs to tie in with our design later. So I've got a piece of black polymer clay rolled out on our thickest setting, 2mm thick. And I've got a ruler. And I'm just going to grab a stiff blade. There we go. And just cutting out a nice piece of clay for us to work with. Get rid of that. And then all I want you to do is start twisting. Just twist. Twist, twist, and carry on twisting. Almost done. Okay, then just twist some more. So we get some really nice tight pieces. Right. Then just trim up each end. And we'll see how that looks. I think it could be a little thinner, so the way we'll do that is just gently pull on it to stretch, stretch, twist, stretch, twist. Being very careful when I'm doing this. Let's try that again. Much better. Alright, so now what I want to do is I'm going to trim these edges again. Just going to pop it on here, and we're not going to pop it on properly just yet. I just want it to be touching the edges properly, and then just trim where they join together. And gently press on that to just get it all stuck together in the right spot. Then I'm going to lift it up. And I just need to twist this section a touch more. Grab some copper mica powder. Brush that over the surface. Okay. Now we could have done this last time, of course, I do realise that, but we won't be able to take it on and off with ease because, well, it would move around, it would stick to the piece and it would cause all sorts of trouble. So I prefer to just bake it 3 times instead of twice. Now I'm just going to brush up the mica powder around the edges. And this is why baking it is nice, because it means that if you get mica powder on your piece, you can just quickly brush it off. It's of no consequence. Okay, and there we are. And then you can just gently press it into the right spot. And there's the piece. So then that's going to go back in the oven for about 15 minutes at pretty much recommended temperature. And then we're going to make another piece. You're going to need some black clay again on your thickest setting and another texture. And keep in mind you can use a sandpaper instead of the sponge. That will work as well. Okay, so I've just textured the back a bit. Now that texture is probably not going to stay there, but it just helps it get going. Then this is what I'm going to be working with. Just pick that up, and the texture on the back has stayed a little bit, but the texture on the side is a little bit more pronounced because I rolled it a little better. Okay, so let's see now. Right, pop that to the side. bring over a piece of nice long clay like we used before, and we're going to again cut out a piece. Like so. And again, just twist. Now both of these are going to be very different. One's very colourful, like that little butterfly one that we did, and the next one that we're doing is going to be a little bit void of colour, and we're just going to add some turquoise accents at the end. So whichever one you want to use, it's completely up to you. I'm just rolling and stretching this. Bring this over again, and I want to be working on a piece of paper. So you have some plain printing paper. I'm going to pop that on. Take this and I'm just going to trim up this end here. Make a mark, trim, take this off, have them meet up, okay. Wrap that around this again. Gently press down so that it is stuck, and this section just needs to be redone. It doesn't have enough twists. Again, I know I'm fiddling a little bit, but this one is a little bit more fussy than the last one. Okay, then because we're on paper, we should be able to lift that cabochon out of there, like so. Okay, now we're going to highlight with some silver mica powder. And I'm just going to brush it on here to start with, and then I'm going to actually just use a brush to do this. Just paint that as best you can. Okay. And we're going to antique this with black afterwards with paint. So we'll get our highlights back. And if you could brush it on with your finger without worrying about, getting mica powder in places that it shouldn't be, then go ahead and do that, but it's a little tricky. One mistake and you've start all over again, so I'm just going to go with a general brush of mica powder, and then we can antique it black so that the black is in the holes again. There we go. Then I'm going to place the cabochon back inside here. Gently press that up against it. Okay, now we're going to trim it. So I'm going to be cutting out a rectangle, so my head needs to be here to see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, then gently round those ends by just using the tip of your blade. Okay, and I'm just checking that I like it. This end is a little bit thinner, thicker than the other end, so I'm just going to gently trim that off and then re-round. Okay, and I'm going to bake this for a full hour at pretty much recommended temperature, and we can add the backing and the other bits and pieces later. And here they are out of the oven. So this one's looking much better now. The copper, like that quite a bit. So we're ready to put a backing on there. This one, however, needs a backing at the moment. But this cabochon's a little loose due to the mica powder on the back, so I'm going to see if I can get it out. There we are. And that's actually a cool way to create a resin bezel. You just make the same sort of shape with polymer clay. Do everything you need to do, bake it, whatever, and then you basically have a finished bezel shape, and then you just insert a resin. I'll have to do a tutorial on how to do that later. Anyway, that was a little off track. We are going to put a backing on this. So grab a piece of black polymer clay and your sponge texture again. There we are. Then we're going to grab some mica powder. And actually no, we're not going to do that. Not a good idea. We need to first apply our bale and then we will apply our backing. So I'm just going to pop this here and I'm just going to trim away a good percentage of that excess so that we can start creating our bales. But we don't want to put mica powder on because we need to stick the bales on and the mica powder will make it not stick. So I'll put that to the side and I'll roll out another piece for our bales. And there we go. Pop that down. And we're going to texture this. Like so. Lift that up. Trim. Trim again. Okay, then grab a straw. Excuse me. And roll it up. Okay, and that should leave a mark for me to use to cut. And now this is going to be the part where we join it, so don't worry about it if it flattens out the texture and things like that. What I do want to do though is I want to have it sitting on here while I'm gently pressing along this length so that we don't lose our texture while we're busy doing this. Okay, and then I'm just going to gently press it along here. And actually what we're going to do is I'll grab this, oops, going off the camera there, and I'm just going to roll it almost. Sorry, I keep coming off the camera, can't really help that. And that will just retexture it pretty much. Then I'm going to slice and get rid of that. and then I need 3. One, 2, and 3. And then I'm just going to do some for the other pendant that we have. Okay, and then just get rid of this excess one. And now I'm just going to quickly pop that in, blast that with the heat gun. You can pop it in the oven if you want to, so that you basically just semi-cure these so that they will slide off this easily. Okay, and while that's cooling, we're just going to pop the backing onto this. Now basically, apart from me putting the backing on, repeat everything I am doing with this pendant with your orange one, or your circle one, whatever you chose to do. Okay, and I've just brushed some bacon bond onto the back here, just a little bit. Then I'll grab my backing, place that on, make sure it's well stuck. Then I'm just trimming away the excess. Then I'm going to pick it up and very gently going to press along these edges to smooth it off. Hopefully you can see there. Just kind of grabbing that little bit along the edge and smoothing it right up against it. I'll do that the whole way around. And there we are. And then the final touch is to just grab your sponge and texture those sides, which I have done for most of them already. Okay, now we're ready for our bales, which I've just quickly gotten off of our stick. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to plan out where you want them to go. I want one grabbing bacon bond, and I want one here and one here. You just have to get it roughly in the right spot. One here. Yeah. Okay, and then press down hard because your backing is raw. So you can press down hard on that, and then I'm just going to reposition it slightly. And that's number one. And now I know that the cabochon has slipped out of here, so what we're going to do is we're going to position it like that, because it will stand nicely, and this works really well. This is why I liked to set my bales already, because I can now let it stand like this without it causing any issues. I can press down on it and it won't reject me by squishing. So I'll go pop that into the oven, and I'm going to do the same for the back of this piece. Okay, and so here they are out of the oven. So you can see what they look like, and I decided not to brush mica powder onto the back of this one, as you can see. Now, I've already chosen out the beads that I want to put with it, so I want a nice big black wooden rondelle with each of them. But then I also want some little copper beads for this one, and little turquoise beads for this one. So we're going to quickly make those, and then we can get on to finishing those ones. So for the little blue beads, you're just going to need some Primo Turquoise, like so, and a cutter. And the cutter is really just to make sure that our beads are all the same size. So I'm going to be using one circle to make 4 little beads and 2 circles to make 1 larger bead, so in total 5. So just going to take that and squish it up. Roll it in your hands until you have no more seams in it. Let's see, we've got a little seam there. You can squish it to get rid of that seam if you need to. Okay, no seams. Then I'm going to bring it over some sandpaper. What I'm going to do, I'm very carefully going to start rolling this, like so. Okay, and all that's going to do is it's going to give it a very light sandpaper texture, and we're going to antique that later. And then I'm going to make 4 smaller ones. And then as for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to be using some pieces of clay that I've cut out, similar to what we did with the border. So just take that and twist and twist. Okay, and the same with this one, I'm going to make 1 largest one and then 4 smaller ones. And I'm going to show you how to drill their holes in a minute as well, because we need largish holes. Okay, I'm just taking this and making sure that I twist it as much as I can. Give it a little stretch. Okay, there we go. Then trim off the ends because some of them generally aren't very nice. And all I want you to do is I want you to do a hole like that, and that will be large enough to fit our cords, I think. There, that will be good. And then I just want you to kind of wrap this around at random so that we kind of create a rondelle of sorts. Okay, I'm just going to look at it from the side. I don't think we need that much, so I'm just going to trim it. So I only want about 3 loops on each side. Okay, so you can see how that looks. And then I will position that on a skewer in a minute to finish it off. Okay, so I'll just bring this over again, and we're just going to pop it onto here with the sandpaper. Just press down on it, because we want to make a rondelle. Okay, and then I'm going to grab a little circle cutter, position that in the middle, and cut out a hole. I'll just smooth this end as well, because we want to fit quite a few cords through this. Okay, and then I'm going to make other ones, but they're going to be round, and the other smaller ones, they don't need to have such a large hole, so we'll probably drill their hole because I want to keep them round. However, this one I do want in a rondelle shape, and I wanted a nice big hole, so I'll show you the smaller ones when I am done. Now as for this, I've got a little skewer that I'm going to be working on. And I've got my copper paint. Oh, not copper paint, copper mica powder again. And I just want you to go with your copper mica powder, the same that you used on the border in the bead, and I want you to just kind of highlight it. Like so. Okay, and here's how it looks. So I've highlighted the front as well, and you can see the sides. So that's our large version. Now I'm going to go and make some smaller versions, and I'll show you what they look like when I'm done. Okay, and so here's what I have. The large one, and then these kind of 4 little small ones. And then my large rondelle, and then my little round beads. And we're going to drill those when we're finished. These ones already have holes. So I'm going to pop them in the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and while they're in the oven we can finish off our pendants, because one of them needs antiquing and one of them needs to be sanded. So we'll do the antiquing first, I think. So I'm just going to grab some black paint, and I'm going to be using this paint today. Okay. I'm just going to squeeze a bit of that onto my tile. And I'm going to brush that over the surface. And I'm trying not to get it on the cabochon, but if I do, it's easily wiped off. So don't worry about that. Just make sure that you get in all those little gaps. And then I will let it dry partially, because it's easier to get it a nice antique if it is already somewhat dry. So just go around and make sure you got everything. If you see any little bits of silver still poking out, make sure that you brush over that. There's one over there. Then I'll let that dry for a little while. Okay. And I've let that dry for a little while. So I've got a wet wipe here. I'm just going to wipe over the surface. And you might need to do this a few times. You might need to go back after letting it dry some more and wipe again. That looks much better. I think it gives it a more grungy look, and it just highlights the texture as well. Okay, and I'm really just going to make sure that I get a lot of that paint off. Okay, and now I'm going to let that dry for a bit longer, just because the paint has been wet now because of the wet wipe, so it needs some more time to dry. And in the meantime, I'll show you how to sand our other piece. So we're just going to need our sandpaper again, like we did before. And I want you to be very careful, because I don't want to sand off the mica powder on this. So I'm being very specific where I sand. And we're going to be putting a layer of resin on this, so it does not need to be a completely smooth sand. You just want to be cleaning up bits and pieces where there's some dirt, like there's dirt on these little white spots. That needs to be cleaned off. That's what I'm focusing on doing. and I'll go to my 600, and I'll just carry on until I probably reach a 1000, just so that it's smoothed out, because we don't need a really nice high shine, because we're just going to be popping some resin on, so it's not too serious if we skip going all the way up to an 8000 grit. There we go, so it's nice and clean. So I'll pop that to the side, and this is dry enough for us to start working with it again. We're not going to get much cleaner than this, we just want to make sure that we don't have any bits of paint hanging around, like this little bit on that corner there. And you could leave it silver if you wanted to, completely up to you. But I kind of like that highlighted look. Okay, so just quickly smooth that off. So I'll pop that to the side. We're going to put Renaissance wax onto this one we're going to be putting some UV resin on, and this is what I'm using. And I'm only going to be putting it on the butterfly bit. I don't want to be putting it on top of this. So I'll just wait for this to come down. There we go. Okay. Then use a brush to brush it around. And just be careful. And you can see it brightens up those colours. Now depending on how it looks, I might put it on the rest of the piece. We'll have to see. Just remember to get the edges, and you can see the edges brings out those colours so much better. Darkens up that black and everything. Okay, and let me just gently brush on a bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to pop some resin on here as well, just because it brightens up those colours and makes it look better. There we go. And then I'm just going to pop a little bit onto the cabochon, but that's optional. Okay, and if we have any streaks, that's okay. I'll smooth those out in a minute once I've got enough resin on here. Now the trick is to put on enough that you're getting a good coat, but not too much that it's flowing all over the place. So just brush around the edges again. Now that I squirted on a little bit more resin. Okay, and I'm just checking for any spots that I might have missed. Cabochon's nice and smooth. Okay, and then I'm going to go pop that into the UV lamp for about half an hour. Okay, and then as for this one, which now has dried, we're just going to brush on some Renaissance wax. And here's what the Renaissance wax looks like. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of that, don't need too much. I'm just going to rub that over the surface, the whole thing. And you don't want too much because wax clogs up textures and things like that. So just gently brush it on. Okay. Then we're going to need a buffing tool. And I'm going to hold it from the bales at the back and I'm going to give it a good buff. There we are. Now I just need to check. Sometimes it does trap hairs in there. So I've got one little hair there. And this is sometimes because of the Renaissance wax. The Renaissance wax sometimes traps little hairs when we're buffing. So I sometimes need to go in and make sure that I don't have any in there anymore. And then I'll just give it a quick second buff. And there we are. So that one's finished. As you can see, nice and shiny. So I'll put that off to the side, and the other one is in the UV lamp. And so when that comes out, we can then take that from the UV lamp and our beads and finish everything off. Okay, so our little beads are out of the oven, and I've drilled 3 of them. So I'm going to show you how to drill the others. So I've just got my pin drill here. I'm just going to start drilling. And this is a smaller drill bit than what I want. So I'm going to start with a small drill. And then I'm going to work my way up to a larger one. Because I need to be able to fit my cord through here. And this is too thin for my cord. But if we start with a larger one, it can actually rip the bead apart. So you want to start with a smaller one and then work your way up to a larger piece. So I'll just continue drilling because this can take a little while. Okay, I've almost drilled through. You can see that there's a little white spot appearing there. When you see that, you want to reverse and go through the other way to get a nice clean hole. And just make sure your fingers are clear when you're doing that, because you can give yourself a nasty poke. Then I've got a larger drill over here. And now, because it's so much larger, it can take a little bit of time to work this through. Especially since this is larger than my pin drill is meant to handle. I don't actually have a drill bit large enough in my actual pin drill set, so I'm just using another drill, but it means that you have to kind of work it in. And I'll just continue working this until I get the whole way through. Okay, and here it is now that it has been drilled. So now you want to antique them. So just grab a skewer and press your bead onto that, and we want some black paint. Same black paint that we used before. And I'm going to antique each of the beads. And you want them to dry completely before you try wiping this paint off. Okay, there's number 1. Get that off. and then I'll just repeat with all of them. Okay, so while those are drying, we can bring over these copper beads that we've made and our piece that is finished in the UV lamp. You see how beautiful that is now, very nice and shiny. And we can start assembling those. So I've got 2 pieces of bugtail here that I've measured around my neck. All I'm doing is I'm just bringing them together like so. Stringing this on. Okay. Then grabbing 2 and another 2. 2 through here and through here. There we go. Put that to the side. And we're going to take one of each of these. We're just going to create a little knot on the end of our cord. And then you can put some glue on the end of that cord if you want. I'm just tightening that up. Okay, that fits quite nicely. I'll do the same here, give that a nice knot, and I'll just repeat for all of them. And just make sure you tie that knot really nice and tight and as close to the end as you can. Okay, and here is how that one is going to look when we're done, and I quite like that it has a flower dash monarch butterfly dash faux stone bezel setting to it, and I really like that design. So that's design number 1. And you'll have seen some more close-up photos of that before you even started the tutorial. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take our other pieces and we're just going to start cleaning that paint off. And I'll repeat with the little round beads as well, until I'm happy that I've got off a sufficient amount of paint. And then just let each of them dry, and then we can move on to assembling that piece as well. Okay, so here's our piece and each of our little turquoise beads. Okay, and so now I'm basically going to repeat the same thing with them as we did the last one. And there we are, that's what that one looks like. So, if you wanted it to be brighter, you could skip the antiquing completely, both in the pendant and in the beads, and it would end up looking quite a bit brighter. You could replace the black with white to make it a little bit lighter as well if you wanted to, but I kind of like this grungy look versus the really bright look of the other one. So, let me just bring over that other one, so you can see how they both look. There, can you see that? Yes, you can. And so those are 2 styles, so hopefully you enjoyed seeing the 2 styles, as I showed quite a few different techniques in each of them that are different. And keep in mind that this is a faux snowflake obsidian tutorial, but you could of course use any faux stone you want. You might need to change the colours up a little bit, but like for instance with this one, that in the middle would look quite nice, and also with that one you can imagine that the faux white faux spiderweb jasper would look quite nice in it. So check out my free YouTube tutorials. I do have a few faux stone tutorials there, and also check out my the backlog on Patreon, as if you're watching this on Patreon you'll be able to get all of the backlog since I posted, and there's a ton of faux stones in there that you could use instead of the Snowflake Obsidian if you wanted. And if you're watching this on Etsy, I do have a lot of faux stone tutorials on Etsy available for purchase if you are interested. So, I do hope that this tutorial was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.